Welcome back to Love, Friendship, and Courage. So, yeah, starting of Disc 4.
You know, Pedro, it's funny you mention how annoying that thing is, even though it's uttered by the character that you like.
Well, Jova, just because I like him, that doesn't mean I like everything about him.
True dweebs, I remember we're in the middle of a time compression. There's some trippy imagery.
Remember
Because
this
now it's time to have a mini gauntlet against a bunch of sorceresses from all time and space.
Let me put it this way, Jova. Laguna is a character that I can actually relate to in this game to an extent, which makes it all the more sad to me when he does something stupid. That's the problem, yeah.
It's interesting that, you know, out of all the Final Fantasy VIII characters represented in the city, at least the PSP Dissidia games, it was only Squall and
Laguna. Remember, there's also Ultimecia, the villain.
Ultimecia.
Didn't someone else get picked for the recent one?
Yes, Rinoa, of all people. But
I mean, she is pretty much like...
I wouldn't take in Cypher every single day, sorry.
Rinoa, who had such epic moments as...
The moment when she tried to emotionally abuse Squall, or the moment
Hold on.
To be fair, they managed to make a decent moveset out of there, thanks to both Angelo and the different types of magics you can use. The CDNT is many things, but it's not an incompetent fighter in terms of gameplay. It's just there's a bit of a stigma that Western audiences do not really like 3D arenas, so it could not catch on, sadly.
Anyway,
I mean, it's not so much that they don't like 3D arenas, it's the fact that Dissidia always has this thing where some of the arenas can feel a little too...
No, it's not that, Jova, but it's a story for another time. Go on, Pedro.
Okay.
Disc 4 is actually pretty much a boss rush for the most part. There's one bit where you have to walk through the castle, but even when you're in the castle, you're basically just fighting boss after boss after boss. So
it's a reference to Final Fantasy V, where in one of the if I recall correctly, it's not the final dungeon, but one of the last. You have a set of bosses which are essentially X-Death set of demons that you have to find in order to get to him. So Kitase wanted to represent it. Again, this game has a lot of references to 5, surprisingly.
Well, Final Fantasy V was the first game that Kitase's worked on too. So.
That being said, there is a segment in Ultimecia's castle where the bosses are optional. However, defeating them does get you very, very...
Well, Joe, we will see that gimmick in a couple minutes, actually. Because again, this was like the second type of sorcerers that we can fight, as you can see, and also the background is changing constantly. Again, representing the time compression. Again, I get this idea behind this distorted Eldritch location. It's not really that far-fetched as an idea. It's just that, what like Pedro said, what will happen after is a bit more straightforward. And this is a worm.
Yeah,
I mean, just saying, it's a Genova monster, pretty much.
It's basically just random generic monsters for us to fight before the big bad.
It even kind of works like Jova, because if I roll the feeder quickly, if you're calculating, she starts a countdown and then casts Ultima.
I think the idea is that this is an Eldritch Abomination sorceress, or maybe a merchant.
No, these are all sorceresses that you have been fighting. Through different corners of time and space that have been attracted through Ultimecia's, time compression.
So I guess this one comes from the atomic future then, where everyone turns into a mutant.
I guess.
Not that it matters because the game never actually explores this topic, or it just throws. As far as the game's concerned, these sorceresses from a different time periods are just here to serve as bosses for you to demolish, basically.
Pretty much. Brilliant.
Seriously, you could have just as well have made them random monsters, and nothing would change really.
Hey, here's an idea. How about an actual final showdown with Cypher?
Sorry, Teo, but like I've told you, Kitase doesn't care about Cypher anymore.
I actually want to how much better? How many improvements would you have to make to the plot to do a remake? The 7
Well, first off, Kitazi would have to be not involved with it at all. That's the first thing right from the beginning. In fact, I like I said before,
which is impossible because of obvious reasons, Pedro.
Well, I'm aware of that, Teo. I'm just stating facts, really. I'm aware of that. It's just that, it's one of those cases, Dwebs, where this guy needs to leave. He really is a burden on the series.
Alright, here we go. Time to get introduced to the final dungeon, actually. Because the landscape changed with...
We're fighting across generations.
Damn.
You couldn't figure that out from the previous boss we just did?
And you couldn't... They did not change outfits?
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ultimecia's bit...
Welcome to Castlevania!
Yes, basically. Yeah. Yes, this is... like me and Teo said in the previous part, the game doesn't really take advantage of the time compression to create some really bizarre-looking vistas for us to explore some kind of trippy visuals. Instead, the final dungeon is basically taking place in a generic evil castle with thunder strikes behind it and everything, really.
I mean, I get what you mean, Pedro, but I still actually have a soft spot for these. As far as final dungeons goes, this is actually one of the more fine to me. Look, you compare this also to Memoria, I think it's called in English.
Memoria,
The final dungeon of 9, yes, so that one actually takes advantage of the 3D imagery. But I mean, in terms of final dungeon that you get for the entire franchise, this is pretty fine to me, and ideally a throwback to Pandemonium from 2.
I don't hate this. I don't hate this.
It also has a very cool music theme that I actually really like.
I don't hate this final dungeon, too.
I don't. Hold on. I actually agree with you. I don't find the castle generic either. I actually like the design. Obvious Castlevania jokes aside.
And by the way, cherish this dialogue that the characters have in front of the castle, because after this, they will shut the fuck up until they reach Ultimecia.
Brilliant.
Oh.
I've never seen anything so creepy. Irvine, how many creepy things have you seen in your life? I've seen plenty creepier. Go ahead, Jerry.
We've come this far. She's got to be here. Also, isn't Irvine pretty creepy himself?
Well, that's the thing. Well, okay. Like we ourselves have said, Shira, in the part. Like, to his credit, he does take no for an answer. So there is that.
I know, but still.
I mean, let me put it this way, Shira. He tries to flirt. The lady says no, and he immediately backs off and goes away. Okay, fine. In that case, I guess there's no harm, no foul, really, when you get right down to that. Anyway.
No.
So basically, the game is telling you right now, okay, if you want to do anything before entering the castle, try and go out and do it.
Are you sure?
Here's the interesting thing. You can actually go back to the Ragnarok. It surprisingly survived the time compression. But most of the world map is basically shut down. You can go around on the fields, but only a few selective dungeons will be visible. The cities are all blocked. You cannot actually enter them. But I know what you're thinking. Man, if only there was... I still want to play card games. How can I do that? Thankfully, in your Ragnarok, there's an entire group made of the posse of that Queen of Cards that we see in one of the early parts, and you can actually challenge them with custom rules and all.
Wait, what does it mean by sealed?
Arthur. Well, exactly this, Dweebs. The gimmick of this final dungeon is that most of your command has been basically stolen by the bosses, and you had to actually catch them up again.
Yes. Basically, this is...
You can't even save the game.
Nope.
No, well, you can leave the castle, Dweebs, because if you leave the castle... Because these seals only apply when you're inside the castle, so you can go back out of the castle and save on that save point we just passed through. So
pretty much.
Now, the cool thing about it is that you can potentially customize the way
there
you
actually
get back.
That's right there. The powers will be sealed while the parties are inside the castle. There you go.
You can actually get them back in the order that you want. So if you want to prioritize saving lives, you can get that. But the best recommendation is to get to draw immediately, like from this first. But you get a first boss like immediately. And it's best if you get draw because aside from getting magic. These are the bosses where you can get the second and only other chance in getting the GFs that you could absorb from previous fights. Not from this one, don't worry. But the game basically kind of tells you that you should get it. Start with the draw command from out of this one, out of Sphinx Sword, I think it's called this one.
That's the thing too. Let me put it this way: it's not so much that I hate the dungeon; it's more so the fact that the game opened up this wealth of infinite potential for really cool, creative visuals, and it doesn't even try to take advantage of it. That's what kind of nags me, you know.
I mean, I guess if they didn't really have that in mind, I can understand why they didn't go with it. Like, the idea is was that Ultimecia's reign is so strong that even with the time compression, her castle still remains as is. And I actually really do find it a pretty cool and iconic design remake. Whereas for 9, they actually did go through with the whole trippy thing or nonsense thing here and there. That's at least my take on it.
Also, for the whole not talking through the final dungeon, I know that 7 did it partially, even though there is an actual pre-final boss, pre-boss dialogue before Genova, you know, on the edge of a crater, or at the point where the party splits up. And it's something that some of the previous dungeons also did, but honestly, this felt like the game that should have broke the tradition. 9 thankfully does, because the final dungeon is constantly spruced with memories of the characters, meaning that they have to talk about it, and starting from that, the characters will start talking even in the final dungeon.
How come the list text is in less quality than the other text?
I don't know, Lives.
Don't ask me, I ain't got a clue.
Again, it's like some of the models. It's like in some scenes where the character models are, you know, clearly not in the HD format, but instead they are the low poly version.
Did you just forget?
No, that's the thing, Dwebs. I get the feeling not all assets they weren't able to recover all assets. That's the problem. They tried their best. They tried their best to reverse engineer shit from the original PS1 discs. The problem is that I guess maybe there were some complications even with that. So a lot of the stuff. So a lot of concessions had to be made. Maybe that's what I'm guessing.
It tends to surprisingly be a thing where, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all remasters are bad, but Square Enix seems to have dodgy luck with their Final Fantasy remasters.
It's more so this one, really, Jova. Like, the main problem is that they never archived anything. Remember, the first Kingdom Hearts had to be rebuilt from the ground up. Nomura himself said it. Back when
Let's not forget the controversies involving the Final Fantasy V and VI remasters.
But the Kingdom Hearts one, did they have to remaster them? Did they have to redo the music from scratch? Or
no.
In a way, yes, because Shimomura actually remixed all of the tracks
with an orchestra.
But they did actually have
with the music is different to us because the music was actually released commercially, separately from the game. So of course they had sources to get the music back from, of course.
Also, Jib, when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, that's a remake, not a remaster.
Let me put it this way, Dwibs. It's kind of like Christian Whitehead's Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 versions. They're technically speaking, they're remakes. They don't look like remakes because they're still using the old assets. But on a technical side, in terms of coding, in terms of the actual code, the code was actually rebuilt from the ground up. That's why it's technically, from a developer standpoint, it's a remake. Because the game had to be remade from the ground up, because according to Nomura, Square Enix never actually archived anything from the original Kingdom Hearts game. So basically, according to Nomura, they had to go back and get the original PS2 Kingdom Hearts Final Mix discs and reverse engineer those.
Square who also lost a bunch of things.
Square Enix is one of the most infamous in terms of losing old assets from the 90s and behind that.
You're right. Wait till we get to the remaster of Final Fantasy IX. And don't get me wrong, great game. And hey, they upscaled the character models for sure, but then backgrounds.
The problem
it's the same thing here, Joe.
It's the same thing here, Joe. But the problem with these the backgrounds of the PS1 Final Fantasy games, that again, Square didn't archive the original art, the original assets of these backgrounds, so they had to reverse engineer them from previous released versions.
Okay.
In the case of 7, they reverse engineered from the PC release of the 90s.
To be fair, when it comes to the remasters of 7 and 8, I've always felt like the backgrounds do fit better with the characters. With Final Fantasy IX, it's the opposite of the problem with the 5 and 6 remasters, or remakes maybe. Basically, for those who don't know, the 5 and 6 remasters / remakes have been, well, they're ugly. pretty damn ugly.
I gotta say only partially, Jova, because you're mostly talking about the field sprites. The actual enemy sprites, I disagree completely. They actually look better than ever been.
I don't think he's talking about the character models too. I think he's talking about the backgrounds. The backgrounds themselves.
No, the character models. Remember, they are the ones that are being used for the mobile versions of the games.
I wasn't strictly talking about the character models. I was talking about how stuff meshes as well here and there. With 9, the problem is that the character models are nice and upscale, but the backgrounds are not. With 5 and 6, it's a bit of an opposite issue where it feels like they just transposed the sprites from the original while updating the backgrounds, yes, but it looks horrible.
But that, again, that's the thing, Jova. The developers themselves said this. They didn't have the original art that was made back in the 90s available to them, so they had to try their best to reverse engineer the PS1 discs and get the backgrounds from there. The problem is the backgrounds before being put on the disc, they had to be compressed as all fuck. You know, so what you're seeing in the Final Fantasy IX remaster is the old PS1 low-res versions of the original art with the HD models, and that's why it looks jarring.
You know, anyway, let me talk. Is that modders are able to do a better job in making.
The modders went out of their way to rebuild backgrounds from scratch. The problem is, the developers of the Final Fantasy IX remaster they weren't given the time and money to do something on that scale. That's the problem.
Anyway, the GM video absorbed from the Krista boss instead was Carbuncle, the one you could absorb from the one of the stone statues that Edia summoned near the end of disc 1. The effect, of course, is the very test basically reflect on all characters. It's pretty simple. The gimmick, instead of switching parties, is actually taken from Final Fantasy VI, where the entire gimmick was around having 2 or more separate parties and having one of them activate one switch while the others will, benefit from it. Pretty classic stuff.
I will give it credit at the very least that with the Final Fantasy IX remaster we get to watch the FMVs straight, because fortunately, as a miracle, someone at Squaresoft had the good sense of saving the original Final Fantasy IX masters of the FMVs. And
as things might have happened if they hadn't, they would have tried.
They would just do the same thing they did for 7 and 8. They would just reverse engineer them. Which to FMVs, it's much easier. It's much easier to reverse engineer movie files than actual in-game assets. So it would, like for example, the FMVs in this remaster look fine. They're presented in their original size ratio. That, which is why the reason you're watching this game on a square that doesn't even fill the bottom and upper parts of the screen is because Dotemu chose to present the game in its original aspect ratio that it was made for, basically.
Here's Carbuncle Shiroi. Isn't it adorable? Now that I know not as much as the one of 15, I know that's a bit cheating. Just be glad we're not using the design you originally had in Final Fantasy V. That thing looked ugly. But no, thankfully, Jova, it seems that with sprite, when it comes to sprite-based game, Square is actually trying to experiment, because if you don't know, for Saga Frontier, which by the time we're recording is supposed to have, an HD edition with cut content, restored in it upcoming.
Yeah.
Square is using an AI algorithm that it's actually pretty famous. It actually became pretty famous. I remember seeing the threads on /B. That is essentially filling in the gaps, quote unquote, when it comes to sprite and background to make it there you go, Siren, to make them look more seamless, that kind of way. It's a bit hard to describe, but imagine something that will look pixelated in HD and this AI kind of fixes it.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Let me put it this way, Jova. The reason the backgrounds in this game look better to you is because they're not stretched. See, Final Fantasy IX, unlike this remaster, chose to upscale the game to fill the entirety of the screen, and by screen I mean a full 4:3 ratio of HDTVs. Obviously it doesn't fill horizontally because it's a full screen, it's a 4:3 game, so it doesn't make sense to stretch that.
I suppose the reason they did that was to match the fact that they had fully remastered sprites that were HD and all that.
Models, but
Yeah,
well,
that reminds
well, that's the
me-
thing, Jova. Unlike this game, they didn't remake the models from 9 from scratch. It's just that they actually still had the OG versions of those models before they were compressed on the PS1. Again, fortunately, somebody had the good sense of saving some assets from 9. Thank
It's
freaking God.
Yeah, that reminds
essentially when it comes
me.
to 9, hold on, Dubs. So essentially when it comes to 9, what we have is sort of a Frankenstein's monster, where some bits
Well, same
were
as this one,
salvaged
Jova,
so that they-
technically.
It's supposed to...
I mean, this one it's not as apparent because, like
It's
I
a
said, I'd
different
say-
Frankenstein monster.
I actually have an
but
explanation
the
for
one has
that.
The same process and all the same.
I actually have an explanation for that, Jova, but Twibs, make your point first.
That actually reminds me of something a bit more local, where the remastering stuff was questionable. Is when they were putting Thunderbirds on Blu-ray. For some reason, even though they had the masters with them, ITV decided to stretch it out to fill up the whole TV, and as a result, things looked either stretched or bits were cut off.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. It's the same thing.
Where they learned their lesson with Captain Scarlet, at least, because everything looks all clean and it's still in 4x3.
As it should.
The only con is that there's no subtitles.
Yeah, the Seinfeld home video releases also had that problem. For some reason, they stretched them to fill widescreen TVs and I don't understand why they do it.
Didn't The Simpsons also have a similar problem at first on Disney
They did,
Plus?
they did, but that's
Thankfully now you can switch it off.
I actually that's the thing too. I actually know how that works because I actually know this. The original Blu-ray releases that Fox made of The Simpsons 2 had that issue, and since Disney went straight to the Blu-ray sources to put the episodes on Disney Plus, that's why that's widescreen. The sources they used were already in widescreen. Then when the backlash happened, okay, sorry guys, we want the 4x3 version. That's why Disney had to go back into the Fox's vaults and try to find the OG DVD releases that were in 4x3 and resource it from there. It's kind of a mess of sorts. But to answer Jova's question, see, Jova, like I said, you'll know. Well, actually, let me explain this puzzle first. Basically, you have various paintings, and you have to pick the correct paintings to form a specific sentence. Teo, you're the Latin expert. Why don't you?
Well, the game actually does provide what the term roughly means, nearby.
There you go. It's too faint to read. The title of this picture is. So we have to pick them in the correct order. Like this.
Why if we get it wrong?
You just fail and you go back and collect more.
Oh,
Vividarium et intervigilium et
Vigilium et vigator.
If I were making this game, if you got it wrong, a gun would just come out of the
In
box
the
and
leave
shoot
some
the
mention.
characters. You get a game over.
But no, there's the cool thing. It's not just a matter of reaching Ultimecia, and fighting just the bosses. For most of them, actually, you kind of need to solve mini puzzles inside the castle. Sorry, this is pretty cool. But I have to admit that this mechanic comes the fuck out of nowhere and can surprise someone who has been accustomed to the game until this point.
I think it's more so too that I feel like they probably should have come up with a different type of gimmick for this dungeon. Why? Because the whole thing where you steal all of the players' commands, so in order to stand a chance against the final boss, I have to go out of my way to defeat all these bosses that I might not want to. What if the player wants to, get straight to the villain so you can see the ending? I feel like they should have given the player a choice and actually allow him to go straight to the final boss if he chooses to. Because the game pretty much strong arms you into doing this entire dungeon and fighting all the bosses, so you'll have a chance with all the commands. That's what I don't really care much for this whole steal the commands thing, to be honest with you.
Also, this boss spawns mini-me's, and this is the most cutest thing ever.
And yes, I am aware, audience. Technically, you can go straight to her even without the commands, and some people will actually see that as an
if you need at least some of them.
Yeah, and some hardcore challenging guys would like to do that as a personal challenge. However, that should be a choice. You shouldn't. The game shouldn't strong arm you into either fighting the boss with extremely arduous difficulty imposed on you, or if you don't want that, then you have to do all this dungeon. Basically, it's kind of like.
Oh, here we go. This is Siren. Pedro absorbed it from the previous boss. So this is the one that you could get from the Elinol boss fight. And this is one of the more notorious things for this remaster because her appearance was slightly changed because in the original game it looked like she had no bikini, no thong, you know. So we put a bit of feathers there, but that's pretty much it. Honestly, I don't really think there's much of a difference. Her effect is that she can inflict the debuff silence onto enemies, which is not really useful because not a lot of them do cast magic, and you might as well just, you know, kill them as fast as you can.
In the meantime, to answer Jova's question, basically, Jova, here's the thing. The reason .mu chose to render this game in its original aspect ratio, again, completely original. This is literally the original aspect ratio that the game was made for back in 1999. See, for TVs that had this exact width and length. So .mu, in order to avoid having that same issue that the Final Fantasy IX backgrounds had, they chose to instead render the game at this aspect ratio to make sure the backgrounds wouldn't need to be stretched.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 8 remaster technically came after 9's, didn't it?
Yeah, remember, Jova, it was one of the things...
8 was the one that suffered the most when it comes to the loss of assets, basically.
For a long time, the 8 fans that I know from my country were very vocal about wanting this game to be re-released, especially because they saw the other titles getting, you know, proper ports, but they were like, when's 8's turn, you know?
I can understand why.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
I mean,
I mean, I don't like this game, but I will always defend that its fans should be allowed to play it if they want to.
Let me put it like this. I have an easier time believing that this game has fans than the 13 trilogy.
Oh.
And I'll explain why in my final thoughts.
Oh, no. I agree with you there, Jova. The sad part is that, trust me, there's plenty of 13 fans out there as well.
Pedro.
I know a handful, so...
Pedro. Not only am I aware, I'm also aware of the infighting of the 13 community. Because there's fighting between all 3 games.
Hey, Teo, remember Ming Ming?
Yeah.
Let me just...
I thought you were talking about that the user made on our post, but...
Even I remember Ming Ming.
Let's just... for Shiro in the audience's sake, basically everybody, on the forum that we go to, we check out the intro video of the channel if you want to know more. There was a user on the Lightning Saga topic that I made for that forum because the forum didn't have one. Oh no, now we're gonna find the Iron Giant, which is basically a classic enemy from the series, basically.
Yep.
And now
specifically for the red variant, which is usually the more stronger version.
There you go, dudes. This is Square's take on the Iron Giant. What do you think?
You are what you choose to be. Now, please choose not to kill me, please.
Okay. I wonder if this is what Nomura. I wonder if this is how Nomura came up with that redesign.
Nope, this is straight up Yoshitaka Amano, dweebs.
Yeah, this was designed by Amano actually.
I thought it was because this comes off to me as Nomura looking at a character design and beefing him up and making him look like a.
Well, remind me, which game did he premiere again? 2. Okay, there you go. There's back in this monster's design goes all the way back to 2, which had character designs by Amano. Nomura wasn't even. I don't think Nomura was even working at the time that 2 released.
I think he started
on with 4 as a debugger essentially.
I know. I mean, he wasn't working. Period. That's what I meant. I think he was still in college at that point.
Here's Leviathan, the one you could absorb from Master Norg for some reason.
How does Norg tie into the God of Water?
Because he's an octopus. They're water.
I have no idea. You could absorb Alexander from Edea. I don't know why.
What don't you see? It's to show that Edea constantly thwarts off her powers to keep from hurting people. Norg is because he's water-based.
I'm aware of it, Iron Giant. I just wanted to show it off. So.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right. But yeah, it boils down to this. Final Fantasy .mu chose to keep the original aspect ratio as so, to make sure the backgrounds are presented in the best possible way. So your mileage may vary. I personally wouldn't have minded stretching the backgrounds just a little bit to make sure we can fill the screen vertically, because because it does look a bit jarring to just watch this square in the center of my HD TV, you know.
I guess they wanted to play it like extra super safe after the backlash that 9 got.
Well, the 9's remaster didn't get backlash. I mean, yeah, there is of course a vocal minority.
Oh, Jova, yes, people were a bit disappointed by the backgrounds, but not to the point of backlash, I can tell you that.
Not really, no.
There was backlash against the visuals. I don't mean like, the remaster was received poorly. I mean, I'm referring specifically to the backlash of the visuals. Like, and there definitely was backlash throughout the remaster, did the backgrounds and whatnot.
If by backlash you mean a vocal very, very small minority complained, I guess, but for the most part, people are fine with the 9 remaster.
Again, like I said, specifically the visuals. I'm not even talking about the remaster as a whole.
No, I know, and I'm talking about the visuals specifically. Also for the visuals, there was a very small number of complaints that I've seen, at least 2. I don't know.
Otherwise, Jova, the Steam reviews should have been mostly negative at launch.
No.
Like, the point is, people complained. Like, big or small bunch of people, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Tio, the visuals were one aspect. If people did have backlash against that, that wouldn't mean that the reviews were automatically negative as a whole, because...
Oh yes, they will. Have you read Steam reviews, Joe?
Yeah, Jova, review bombing has been a thing for a long, long time.
Okay. To be fair, review bombing does not have to be how we measure backlash of games. Granted, unfortunately, sometimes companies will only listen when people are incredibly negative, because God forbid listening to criticism...
Well, I wasn't talking about that, Jova, but again, considering that the port of 9 came first and foremost on Steam and only way later on console, that should have been basically the outlet for, for people to express their disconcern.
Let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. You want a backlash, Jova? Take a look at the original 1.0 release of the Chrono Trigger. Of the Chrono Trigger. Now that was backlash. Fortunately, the team was fully committed to fixing it, and after multiple patches over the course of an entire year, that version has went from being the worst version of the game to the best version of the game.
It's a miniaturized No Man's Sky story when you get down to it.
Yeah.
So is it so it must be a port of the DS version then, considering that's
mobile version.
What wasn't the mobile version? What wasn't the mobile version?
The mobile version essentially is a Frankenstein monster on its own because it combines the content of the DS version in terms of expanded stuff, but the personalizing interface is more similar to the PlayStation version.
So basically, stick with the DS or PC version these days.
Essentially.
No, the PC version by that is the best one. It has everything.
Consoles.
No, sadly only for PC for the time being.
I'm sure it will make it to consoles
I
eventually.
have it in my Steam library. Maybe I'll give it a try for recording purposes in the future. Who knows?
No, it's the best version. As for 9, the best way to play Final Fantasy 9 is through the Steam remaster with the Moguri mod, which basically inserts the original HD backgrounds that were remade from the ground up by the community. It replaces the text font with the classic, more Final Fantasy pixelated font that from the classics. Again, if you're someone...
Keep in mind that it's still getting updated to this day in order to fix minor things, because usually mods tend to have that kind of effect of potentially causing crashes in some places. But again, it's still getting updated, to look perfect. A bit similar to how the guy who's making the texture HD mod for Resident Evil 4
Teo
is doing.
Teo, after hours...
How are you getting money in this time?
Seed payment, Teo.
You constantly get paid.
Well, remember, I get paid by walking, Jova.
But from whom, Jova? We're literally in nowhere in time.
Yeah,
Teo, it's called Teo. We're not in the 1950s anymore. There is such a thing as bank transfers. You know that, right?
Exactly. Don't you see? It doesn't matter what time we're at. Seed will still
Except if you live in Britain and it's a bank holiday. Not even bank transfer works.
If you give me your bank account number, Teo, I can literally transfer money to you right now. We're not in the Stone Age anymore. Come on, Teo.
That doesn't sound very suspicious at all.
Allow me to introduce you to a thing called PayPal.
Well, technically, Teo.
Provide me with the 3 digits on the back of the card.
Actually, Shiro. I mean, I don't know how it works in your countries, but here in my country, if you just give the NIB, which in my country translates to number of bank identification. Giving someone that number, all that allows that person to do is to send you money. It literally, that person will not be able to literally to do anything else with that number.
Yeah, we have a similar thing here. It's technically
No, I know that.
It's technically the
talking about
code
something
system that it has your bank account. Here it's called IBAN.
So if Teo gives me...
This game is so riveting. We're talking about bank.
Bank transfers work.
To be fair, we probably have ended up
Final
doing
Fantasy
that
VIII
regardless.
filing royal taxes.
Remember this. We're commentating on how bank transfers are a thing in this universe. It's related. So
That's the problem.
Final Fantasy VIII 2 seed pay or something.
That's the thing that I'm questioning. Like, literally, there is no one in this world who should be paying you, technically, because everyone is either dead or non-existent in this.
let me put this way, Teo.
Not
Squall checked his bank mobile app from on his phone, and he looked that Sid transferred his latest payment. See,
it's so bizarre. Like Earthbound did this concept so much better. Your conscience is transporting to robots. Your time, because you're time traveling, and you can. And no one can contact you once you're there.
I have a theory, actually.
Oh man.
Who's the most tech savvy of the group?
that would
Probably
be.
Pedro.
Yeah.
No, he
No,
checking out the
He means the character.
Oh,
He means the characters in this game.
Zell, he knows the stuff about Steam Indie.
Zell, basically, before they left, Zell used his knowledge to hack into Seed to make sure they got paid no matter what happened to them.
I guess.
No. Again, I can't speak for other countries, but if Teo gave me the equivalent of the Italian equivalent of his NIB, the only thing I would be able to do with that information is just pay him shit. So it's completely safe on his part to do that. So.
Face my wrath for seeking thy
Dude,
sealed
you want to
power.
stand up a bit? Jesus, it's just a face.
I'll just lie here.
Like to give you.
I'm tired, okay?
You could actually fight this monster in the Salt Lake near the Salt Ruins near Astar, but this is a special occasion because in those you can only fight the face and the hands. There's gonna be a bit of a gimmick to this one instead.
Exactly. But no, it boils down to the fact that the Square didn't have the common sense to create an archival department to store this crap until the mid-2000s, basically. And that's a shame.
I can tell you this, Jova, they are better in handling things now, especially with the sprite stuff, because, for example, the collection of mana turned out to be right, the Saga games have turned out to be fine, and even the new titles that are coming, like Saga Frontier, seems to be improving thanks, again, to the AI program that we're using.
Yeah.
So only time will tell if they manage to actually keep improving or not.
The Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD collection was also the same thing. They didn't have the assets, so once again they had to reverse engineer everything from the discs as well.
The 12 one works for the most part, but your best place to play is probably the PC version if you want, because it's the only one that now runs at 60 FPS. And even the bonuses that were added on the Switch version actually got ported into the other version.
Honestly, Teo.
Alright, here's Pandemona, the gem that you could absorb from Fujin during their first fights. This is just a thing with a tentacle horn thingy that absorbs wind and then releases it.
I don't know, Teo, considering 10 goes back to the traditional NES style turn-based combat, I find the 60 FPS pretty much a pointless of an addition.
I'm talking about 12, Pedro.
Oh, 12. Oh, sorry. Well, okay, I guess maybe. Sure.
Is it the Zodiac Age, right?
Yeah, Zodiac
Yes.
Age. That one was done by Virtuous
Studios.
That one was done by Virtuous Studios. The same guys who remastered Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls.
I can tell you
Maybe also
this,
did 10.
like a Chinese company,
Yeah.
but I can tell.
I meant they also did the 10-10-2 remaster.
Oh, they were the same. I guess
They
they
are.
actually did improve.
I think
But-
so.
But I can tell you this with the like Pedro was mentioning, the 30 60 FPS difference doesn't mean too much So when actually get to the game, you will see for yourself. And gotta be honest, the Zodiac Age actually does look gorgeous because the original game was done in the tail end of the PS2.
Sure.
And so in this version it looks better. But here's the gimmick: the boss actually stands up now. Okay, finally.
For 10 and 10 too, the best place to play is on the PC because the PC version has exclusive boosters, like this game has boosters. And for some reason, Square didn't bother putting the boosters on the console versions, and I don't understand why.
Because someone at Square had a bet.
Well, that's the thing to it. So first they released the PS3 version of the collection, then the PS4 version, and then when they really put it to PC, that's when they added the boosters. And then like with 12, they didn't go back and updated the previous versions.
Well, like I said, Pedro, it took a very long time to add the Switch extra feature onto the other version. Maybe it could still happen in the future.
I hope so. I mean, considering the 7 remaster was updated 4 years after release, I guess everything's possible.
Even the 3 remaster actually got updated with, it's not a remaster, but the PC version of 3, which was a port of the PSP version in turn, actually got updated a very long time after to reflect modern changes.
Mm-hmm.
Same, I think, goes for 4 and the after.
But yeah, let me just
on the same engine.
Before the part is over, let me just quickly explain it because I never finished explaining this to the audience and Shiro by extension. Basically, everybody, there's this person on that forum we visit that was a staunch defender of the 13 trilogy. What's funny is that that discussion in the forum got to a point where she even said, no, you don't. After she even got to a point where she said, no, guys, the story is not the reason why I like 13-1 so much. And immediately everybody was all like, wait, if the story is not the reason, then what is it? Because outside of the battle system, do you really love the battle system that much? Because outside of the battle system, gameplay-wise, there's not really anything to this game. Like, let's just say trying to reason with that person was an exercise in futility, and that's the best way I can put it. All right, everybody, tune in next time where we finish this dungeon and get to the final save point before Ultimecia, and we'll end there before the final. See ya.
See ya.